Folks like you are better at scrubbing toilets than scripting code. Marcus Thorne's voice, a low baritone accustomed to absolute obedience, sliced through the stale, air-conditioned silence of the conference room. He lifted his heavy, branded Nexus Dynamics coffee mug from the polished mahogany table. On the other side of the glass walls, 25 of the brightest software engineers in Austin, Texas, froze mid-keystroke, their faces illuminated by the glow of their dual monitors. The entire 18th floor, the beating heart of the company's innovation engine, held its collective breath. Thorne, a man whose silver hair and tailored Italian suits screamed old money power, tilted the ceramic mug with the theatrical slowness of a hangman pulling a lever. A torrent of lukewarm, black coffee cascaded over Isabella Diaz's head. It streamed down her face, tracing paths through her meticulously applied, understated makeup, and soaked the collar of her crisp white blouse, turning it a muddy, humiliating brown. Isabella, or as her fake employee badge read, Anna Morales, a nobody intern from a state school, didn't flinch. She sat perfectly still, a statue of defiance in a storm of degradation. The coffee dripped from her chin onto the fraudulent resume spread before her, the ink of her fabricated achievements beginning to bleed. If you're watching this right now, I need you to do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, like this video, and let me know in the comments where in the world you're watching from. What Marcus Thorne, the titan of Nexus Dynamics' engineering department, didn't know was that his entire world, the empire he had built on fear and prejudice, was about to be systematically dismantled in the next 7 minutes. His career was already dead. He just hadn't heard the eulogy yet. Just 24 hours earlier, Isabella Diaz sat across from her father, CEO Alejandro Diaz, in the sprawling corner office on the 40th floor of the Nexus Dynamics Tower. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic vista of the Austin skyline, a city of steel and glass that her father's company had helped build. But his face, usually a mask of calm authority, was etched with the profound weariness of a man running a Fortune 500 company on the brink of a moral crisis. "The reports just keep coming, Izzy," Alejandro said, his voice heavy. "For this quarter alone, all from the 18th floor, all from his department." Isabella's eyes scanned the confidential files laid out on his desk. They were a mosaic of modern corporate cruelty. Screenshots of derogatory Slack messages, email chains where candidates were dismissed for not being a cultural fit, a flimsy shield for blatant discrimination, performance reviews that were glowing with praise 1 month and inexplicably scathing the next, always for women or people of color who dared to excel. Every single complaint, a thread in a tapestry of toxicity, led back to one man, Marcus Thorne. "I need someone on the inside," Alejandro sighed, leaning back in his chair, the expensive leather groaning under the weight of his burden. "Someone they'll never see coming. Someone who can gather irrefutable proof before he poisons the soul of this company for good." Isabella nodded, a silent, steely resolve solidifying in her gut. This was the moment she had been preparing for, ever since she'd graduated summa cum laude from MIT with dual degrees in computer science and strategic management. Her father had built Nexus Dynamics from a dream, sketched on a napkin, into a global tech behemoth. She would not stand by and watch a petty tyrant tear it down from within, brick by corrupt brick. The next morning, Anna Morales walked through the cavernous marble and glass lobby of Nexus Dynamics. Her resume was a work of fiction. Her references were carefully crafted lies, but her skills were devastatingly real. Skills that would incinerate their low expectations if they ever bothered to look past the color of her skin and the humble state university listed on her badge. The elevator chimed softly at the 18th floor. The engineering department. It was an open-concept tech utopia. Rows of pristine workstations, ergonomic Herman Miller chairs, and gleaming dual-monitor setups. It was the kind of playground she had dreamed of since she was a girl coding in her bedroom. There was just one glaring problem. As she stepped out, 48 white and Asian faces turned to stare. The silence was immediate and profound. Only 2 people offered her a lifeline. A black woman named Priya Sharma and a Latino man, Leo Martinez, both of whom gave her small, sympathetic smiles that spoke volumes of shared experience. A woman from HR, a nervous-looking blonde named Jennifer Walsh, appeared with Anna's temporary badge. "Everyone, this is our new intern, Anna Morales," she announced with forced cheerfulness. "She's a computer science grad from Texas State." Texas State, not MIT. The lie felt like ash in her mouth, but it was a necessary poison. She'll be working with Marcus's team on the new authentication protocol. A few perfunctory nods. Most of the engineers had already swiveled back to their screens, but Isabella saw it all. The whispered asides, the sideways glances, the way Jennifer's smile was a hollow, brittle thing. Then he emerged from his corner office. Marcus Thorne surveyed his domain like a feudal lord. He was in his early 50s, with that arrogant, athletic build that comes from expensive gym memberships and a lifetime of privilege. The Armani suit he wore probably cost more than her first car. "So," he began, his voice dripping with condescension, "you're the new addition." He let the pause hang in the air, a tiny, perfectly crafted insult. "Anna Morales, sir," Isabella said, her voice steady and professional. "I'm excited to get started." Thorne's eyes performed a cold, dismissive scan, from her sensible shoes to her carefully tied-back hair. "We maintain exceptionally high standards here, Miss Morales," he said. "Excellence is not a goal, it's a baseline requirement." "I would expect nothing less, sir." "Good," Thorne said, then turned to address the entire floor, his voice booming with performative authority. "Let's all remember, people, we are not running a social experiment here. We are building the software that powers global commerce. There is no room for participation trophies or charity cases on this floor." Every word was a shot aimed directly at her. Isabella felt the weight of 50 pairs of eyes. Some were curious, some were deeply uncomfortable, and a few were openly hostile. A lifeline appeared. A senior developer in his mid-30s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses stepped forward. "Anna, I'm David Chen. You can set up at the empty desk next to me. I can walk you through the dev environment." It was the first moment of genuine warmth she'd felt all morning. "Thanks, David. I appreciate that." Thorne's jaw tightened into a knot of muscle. "David," he said, his voice dangerously soft. "Remember our conversation about not enabling mediocrity?" "Richard, I just think—" "It's Mr. Thorne, David," he corrected him sharply, "and I don't pay you to think. I pay you to code. Get back to it." The unspoken threat was as thick and suffocating as smoke. David's shoulders slumped in defeat. He gave Isabella an apologetic look before retreating to his workstation. Isabella spent the rest of the morning in quiet observation, a digital ghost absorbing data. Thorne ruled his kingdom through a toxic cocktail of fear and blatant favoritism. His inner circle, a trio of sycophantic senior developers who laughed too loud at his terrible jokes, were rewarded with the best assignments, flexible hours, and a free pass on their frequent mistakes. Everyone else navigated the office like it was a minefield. She watched him publicly belittle Priya Sharma's code review. "Maybe take another pass at this, Priya. I know it can be a challenge for some to keep up with our standards of quality." Priya's hands trembled as she started rewriting her perfectly good code for the 3rd time. Leo Martinez received similar treatment during the afternoon stand-up meeting. "Leo, are you absolutely certain you grasp the architectural complexities here? I can assign you something a bit more straightforward if you're feeling overwhelmed. Leo had literally co-authored the company's foundational codebase. His knowledge of the system was encyclopedic. But he just clenched his jaw, nodded, and accepted the demeaning, simpler task. The pattern was brutally, painfully clear. It wasn't a single fireable offense. It was death by 1,000 cuts, a constant soul-crushing campaign of undermining, disguised as maintaining high standards. At precisely 4 p.m., Isabella submitted her first piece of code. It was an impossibly elegant fix for a persistent authentication bug that had plagued the team for over a month. The code was clean, ruthlessly efficient, and so thoroughly documented it could serve as a training manual. It was objectively better than anything she'd seen in their entire repository. Thorne reviewed it in less than 10 minutes. She watched as his face went from curious to surprised, then flushed a deep, angry red. He stood up and announced to the floor, "An interesting approach from our intern, though I have to wonder if it's truly scalable. Sometimes, what looks clever on the surface lacks the institutional knowledge required for long-term stability." Every competent engineer in the room knew her code was flawless, but nobody said a word. The silence was a testament to Thorne's reign of terror. With a few clicks, Thorne deleted her commit. He then reassigned the bug to his golden boy, Brad Stevens. "Brad, see if you can polish this up. Let's make it look professional." Isabella watched, her blood turning to ice, as Brad copied her solution line for line, changed a few variable names, and submitted it 30 minutes later as his own. Thorne approved it instantly. "Now this," he boomed. "This is the kind of professional-grade quality we strive for. Excellent work, Brad." The entire department was a silent witness to the theft, the favoritism, the casual, breathtaking cruelty. Isabella felt that old, familiar fire ignite in her chest. The same helpless rage she'd felt at 16 when she was rejected from a summer coding camp, while boys with half her grades were welcomed with open arms. But this time was different. This time she wasn't helpless. This time she held a power they couldn't even begin to comprehend. She could feel Thorne was planning something bigger, something more final. The way he had scheduled a mandatory team meeting for the next morning. The way he had been seen in hushed conversations with Jennifer from HR. Isabella had one day to finalize her case. One day to gather the last pieces of evidence. She had no idea it would all come to a head in just 7 explosive minutes. Isabella arrived the next morning with a state-of-the-art digital audio recorder disguised as a pen and a mission etched in her mind. Her father had texted her before dawn. "Board meeting got moved up to 10 a.m. today. Whatever you're going to do, Izzy, make it fast." The air on the 18th floor was thick with a strange, nervous energy. Thorne had scheduled an all-hands performance evaluation and team restructuring meeting, a title so dripping with corporate euphemism that everyone knew it meant layoffs. David Chen caught her by the coffee machine, his eyes wide with anxiety. "Anna," he whispered, "I don't know what Marcus is planning, but please be careful today. He's been meeting with HR non-stop." "What kind of meetings?" "The kind where people are escorted out with a cardboard box afterward," David said, darting a nervous glance toward Thorne's office. "He keeps talking about trimming the fat and realigning our culture for maximum efficiency." Isabella's phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from an unknown number. "Your code fix yesterday was brilliant. Don't let him steal your light." A friend. She scanned the room. Who could have sent it? Priya was laser-focused on her monitor. Leo was typing with furious intensity. Was it David? Before she could ponder it further, Thorne's voice echoed across the department. "All right, everyone, conference room. Now, let's have an honest conversation about the future of this team." 25 engineers shuffled into the glass-walled room like prisoners on their way to a parole hearing. Isabella saw that Thorne had a PowerPoint presentation queued up, titled Nexus Dynamics, a commitment to uncompromising excellence. He also had his signature coffee mug, filled to the brim with steaming black coffee. He stood at the head of the table, a general addressing his troops before a purge. "We are at a critical juncture in this company's history," he began. "Our next product launch will define our market position for the next decade. We simply cannot afford any weak links." Isabella sat near the back, activating the recorder pen and placing her phone on the table, discreetly starting a video recording. "I have spent the last week conducting a thorough review of performance metrics, code quality, collaborative synergy, and, most importantly, cultural fit." His eyes scanned the crowd and landed with predatory precision on Isabella. "And some deeply concerning patterns have emerged." Jennifer from HR sat to Thorne's right, her face a mask of discomfort, a legal pad filled with nervous scribbles in front of her. "Let me be specific," Thorne said, clicking his laptop. Isabella's elegant code solution from the previous day filled the massive screen. "This was submitted by our newest team member." Isabella's heart began to pound a steady, powerful rhythm against her ribs. "Here we go." "At first glance," Thorne continued, his voice dripping with false magnanimity, "it seems sophisticated, clever even. But when you look deeper, you see the real story." He clicked to the next slide, which was just a list of bullet points in an aggressive red font. "No consideration for existing team conventions, a complete lack of collaboration with senior developers. This is a classic example of individual showboating over collective harmony." David Chen raised a tentative hand. "Marcus, that solution is actually—" "It's Mr. Thorne, David," he snapped. "And I am not finished." He picked up his coffee mug, taking a long, deliberate sip. "This kind of attitude is precisely what we are trying to eliminate. The arrogant belief that raw, unrefined talent is an excuse to ignore our established culture and processes." Isabella looked at the 24 faces around her. Some were confused, most were uncomfortable. His 3 sycophants nodded along like bobbleheads. In the corner, she saw Priya Sharma, her own phone now out, discreetly recording from under the table. Thorne gestured toward Isabella with his mug. "Anna Morales, Texas State University. No internship experience at any Tier 1 tech firms. References from professors I've never heard of." He stood up, mug still in hand, and began to pace. "This is the inevitable result when we lower our hiring standards, when we are forced to prioritize diversity metrics over a proven track record of excellence." His voice was rising now, filling with righteous indignation. "We get people who think they can just waltz in here and reinvent a system they don't even begin to understand." The fire in Isabella's chest was now a raging inferno. The anger of a lifetime of being underestimated, of having to be twice as good to get half the credit, was reaching its flashpoint. But this time, she had a plan. "Mr. Thorne," she said, standing up slowly, "may I respond?" "Of course," he sneered. "Please enlighten us all with your unique perspective." The room fell so silent you could hear the hum of the servers down the hall. Every single eye was on her. Priya's phone camera was steady. "I believe there may have been some misunderstanding regarding my qualifications," Isabella began. "Oh, I understand perfectly," Thorne said, walking toward her, the coffee mug held like a weapon. "You wrote a clever piece of code, and now you think you've earned a seat at the table with the adults. But clever isn't enough here. We require reliability, consistency. We require people who understand our culture." "And what culture is that, exactly?" Isabella asked, her voice dangerously calm. "Excellence, standards, the kind of uncompromising professionalism that built this company, not the participation trophy mentality that is poisoning this generation." David tried one last time. "Marcus, Anna's solution actually—" "Enough!" Thorne slammed his free hand down on the conference table with a deafening crack. The coffee mug jumped in his grip. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Making excuses for mediocrity, lowering our expectations. He turned back to Isabella, his face now a mottled, furious red. Here's the truth, Miss Morales. People like you think you're owed something. You think your background entitles you to special treatment. But in the real world, competence is the only thing that speaks. He raised the coffee mug, holding it high like he was making a toast. This, he declared, represents everything that is wrong with modern hiring, prioritizing demographics over merit, feelings over facts. Isabella watched the mug hover directly over her. She saw the decision in his eyes. Folks like you are better at scrubbing toilets than scripting code. He tilted his wrist. The hot coffee poured over her head, soaking her hair, streaming down her face, staining her white blouse a deep, shameful brown. The room exploded in a collective gasp of shock. Even Thorne's most loyal followers looked horrified. Jennifer from HR went ashen. Isabella sat perfectly still as the coffee dripped from her hair onto the table, with a calm, deliberate slowness that was more terrifying than any scream. She reached for a napkin, wiped her face, and looked Marcus Thorne directly in the eyes. An interesting perspective, Mr. Thorne, she said. Her voice held no tremor, no fear, just a quiet, chilling confidence that made the entire room lean in. What would you do in this situation? How would you react? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video if you are on the edge of your seat. David Chen finally found his voice, his fear incinerated by outrage. Marcus, that's assault. You can't do that. I can't what, David? Thorne sneered, high on his own adrenaline. Demonstrate what happens when standards are compromised? Set a clear expectation for performance? Maybe you need to think very carefully about which side you're on. Isabella calmly took out her phone, coffee still dripping from the ends of her hair. Mr. Thorne, would you mind repeating that last part? The bit about scrubbing toilets. I want to be certain I've documented it correctly for my report. Document this? Thorne let out a short, barking laugh. Document what? A teachable moment? Good luck with that. Her phone was already dialing. She pressed the speakerphone button. The entire room held its breath as the phone rang once, twice. Izzy, honey, is everything all right? The board meeting is about to start. The voice that filled the silent room belonged to Alejandro Diaz, the founder and CEO of Nexus Dynamics. Marcus Thorne's face cycled through a kaleidoscope of horror. The blood drained from it so fast he looked like a ghost. What happened next would become the stuff of legend at Nexus Dynamics. The conference room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Thorne's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Dad. Isabella's voice was clear and steady, amplified by the speakerphone. I'm in a team meeting with Mr. Thorne. He was just sharing his philosophy on hiring people like me. People like you? Alejandro's voice turned from warm and paternal to razor-sharp steel. What exactly did he say, Isabella? David Chen stood up, his voice shaking but resolute. Mr. Diaz, this is David Chen from the engineering team. Sir, what just happened here was assault. It was beyond unacceptable. Thorne finally found his voice, a weak, desperate squeak. Alejandro, I can explain. This is all a terrible misunderstanding. It's being taken completely out of context. Marcus, the CEO's tone could have frozen lava. You are on speakerphone with my daughter. Priya Sharma, seeing her opening, held her phone up higher. Her live stream viewer count was skyrocketing. 500 viewers. 1,000. 2,500. Wait a minute, whispered Brad Stevens, Thorne's protege. Her badge says her last name is Morales. Morales is my mother's maiden name, Isabella announced to the room, her voice ringing with newfound authority. Diaz is my father's, as in Alejandro Diaz, the man who signs your paychecks. Jennifer from HR dropped her pen. It clattered loudly on the table. Her legal pad, once a tool of corporate procedure, suddenly looked like a shield that wasn't nearly big enough as she scribbled frantically. Leo Martinez pulled out his own phone and hit record. "Sending this to the anonymous HR tip line right now," he whispered to the person next to him. Thorne's face was a frantic slideshow of emotions, confusion, raw fear, and the desperate, dawning realization that he had just committed career suicide in the most public way imaginable. "Mr. Diaz, sir, I had no idea. This is a misunderstanding. She never identified herself." "So, is this how you treat all your interns, Marcus?" Alejandro's voice was a blade. "You humiliate them publicly? You pour coffee on them? You tell them they belong on the cleaning staff?" Priya's live stream had hit 2,000 viewers. The comments were flying too fast to read. "OMG, get him! This is epic! CEO's daughter, undercover boss style. That dude is so fired." David Chen, now emboldened, spoke again. "Mr. Diaz, this is not an isolated incident. Marcus has been fostering a hostile and discriminatory work environment for years. Priya, Leo, and I can all attest to it." "That's a lie," Thorne yelped, his voice cracking. "I hold every member of my team to the same high standard." "Equally?" Priya looked up from her phone, her live stream now at 2,500 viewers. "You made me rewrite my code 3 times yesterday for no reason other than to undermine me. You told Leo he wasn't smart enough to handle complex architecture, even though he designed most of it." "I was providing constructive feedback," Thorne pleaded. "And you stole my code," Isabella interrupted, her voice cutting through his pathetic defense. "You deleted my commit and had Brad resubmit it as his own." 24 pairs of eyes swiveled to Brad Stevens. He looked like he was about to be sick. Marcus asked me to review it," he stammered. "You copied it line for line," Leo said flatly. "I checked the commit logs and the timestamps. It was a direct copy." Thorne's inner circle, his 3 loyal lapdogs, suddenly became intensely fascinated with their own shoes. The entire power structure of the room had inverted in less than 3 minutes. "Mr. Diaz," Jennifer Walsh from HR finally spoke, her voice a reedy whisper. "I believe we need to schedule a formal meeting to discuss these allegations and—" "Jennifer?" Alejandro's voice was laced with disappointment and fury. "You have been aware of multiple discrimination complaints from Marcus's department. What have you done about them?" I've been investigating, sir, following the proper protocols." Priya's viewer count hit 3,000. She angled her phone to get a perfect shot of Thorne's terrified, sweating face. "Following protocols?" David laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. "You told me to document everything carefully when I complained about how Marcus treated diverse members of our team. That was 6 months ago. What happened to my documentation, Jennifer?" The legal pad on the table seemed to mock her with its blankness. Isabella stood up, commanding the room's attention not as an intern, but as its rightful heir. "Mr. Thorne, you said that competence speaks for itself. You're absolutely right." Thorne tried to interrupt, to apologize, to rewind time. Isabella, I think we got off on the wrong foot here. Let me finish." Isabella's voice was quiet, but it held the unshakable authority of a queen. "You said people like me don't understand your culture, your standards, your definition of excellence." She began to walk slowly toward the front of the room. Thorne unconsciously took a step back. "But here's what I understand. I understand that my code was a perfect solution to a problem your best people couldn't solve. I understand that you stole it because your fragile ego couldn't handle being shown up by someone you had already dismissed as inferior. Priya's livestream chat was a waterfall of fire emojis and messages of support. "Drag him, Queen. This is better than any reality TV show. The CEO's daughter is a savage," Isabella continued, her voice gaining strength. "I understand that you have spent years systematically marginalizing brilliant engineers because they didn't look like you or come from the same background as you, creating a paper trail of false performance issues to cover your discriminatory tracks." Thorne was ghostly white. That's not true. I also understand," she said, delivering the final blow, "that you've been lobbying my father and the board for a promotion to Chief Technology Officer, all while building a toxic culture that would have drowned this company in lawsuits and driven away its best talent." The room was utterly silent, save for the frantic tapping of thousands of viewers on Priya's live stream. "What would you all do in this situation?" Isabella asked, looking directly at Priya's camera. "Let me know in the comments." 4,000 viewers and climbing. The hashtag #BortNexusRevolution was beginning to trend on Twitter. Thorne made one last desperate gamble. "Alejandro, this is a setup, a carefully orchestrated family ambush to undermine my authority." It was the wrong move. Isabella smiled, the same vacant smile from before, but now everyone in the room understood its true, terrifying meaning. "Mr. Thorne, I believe it's time for your performance review." She held up her own phone. The audio recording app showed it had been running for 23 minutes. "I have clear documented evidence of harassment, discrimination, intellectual property theft, and the creation of a hostile work environment. Jennifer, I'd suggest you start reviewing the legal ramifications of corporate complicity before this goes any further." Jennifer Walsh looked like she was going to faint. David Chen started a slow, deliberate clap. Leo joined in. Then Priya, still live-streaming to 5,000 viewers. Soon, even some of Thorne's former supporters were clapping, a rising tide of applause for the downfall of a tyrant. Marcus Thorne stood alone, a king in a collapsed castle, watching his career burn to the ground in real time. "Performance reviews go both ways, Mr. Thorne," Isabella said, looking at the 24 faces around the room, faces that were a mixture of shock, glee, and liberation. "Dad," she said into the phone, "I think we need to start that board meeting, right now. What happened next would permanently alter the course of Nexus dynamics." "Isabella Diaz," her father's voice rang through the speakerphone, filled with pride and righteous anger. "My daughter, and your future CEO." The conference room fell into a silence so profound it was almost deafening. Marcus Thorne's face, if it were possible, turned an even paler shade of white. Your daughter?" he stammered, his voice cracking like a pubescent teenager's. Isabella squared her shoulders, the timid intern persona dissolving like a phantom. In her place stood a woman radiating the confidence and authority of someone who hadn't just graduated from MIT, but had conquered it. A woman who had been preparing for this very moment for 2 years. "Surprise, Mr. Thorne." Priya's livestream had crested 6,000 viewers. The comments were a blur of pure chaotic joy. "Plot twist of the millennium. Undercover CEO. This man is beyond fired. He's deleted." Thorne stumbled backward, physically reeling from the shock, until his back hit the conference room wall. "I didn't know," he pleaded, his voice thin and reedy. "Nobody told me. This isn't fair." "Fair?" Isabella's voice was arctic. "Was it fair when you dismissed my resume without reading it? Was it fair when you told me people like me should be scrubbing toilets?" Jennifer from HR was scribbling furiously, no longer taking notes, but likely drafting her own resignation letter. The tide had turned, and everyone in that room knew they had to choose a side. The evidence was overwhelming, and it was being broadcast to the world. "Marcus Thorne," Isabella continued, her voice now imbued with the executive presence she had inherited from her father. "Your employment with Nexus Dynamics is terminated. Effective immediately. You can't do that, Thorne shrieked, his composure shattering completely. I'm the vice president of engineering. I have a contract. I have rights. You had rights. Alejandro's voice cut through the speakerphone like a judge's gavel. You forfeited them when you assaulted an employee, when you fostered a discriminatory environment in violation of federal law, when you committed felony intellectual property theft by ordering another developer to steal my daughter's proprietary code. Brad Stevens, the code thief, looked as if he was trying to physically will himself to become invisible. Mr. Diaz, Brad whimpered. I can explain about the code. I was just following orders. The explanation is simple, Isabella interjected coolly. You actively participated in a scheme to commit fraud and discrimination. Your employment status is now under formal review. Thorne collapsed into the nearest chair, a puppet with its strings cut. 24 of his now former colleagues watched his utter disintegration. Please, he whispered, his voice hoarse. I have a family, a mortgage, kids in college. I didn't mean any of it. You didn't mean what? Isabella pressed, stepping closer. You didn't mean to dismiss me as a diversity hire. You didn't mean to imply I was only fit to be on the janitorial staff? Priya's live stream had hit 8,000 viewers. The comments were a mix of brutal schadenfreude and genuine celebration. Karma is a beautiful thing. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. This is what accountability looks like. Leo Martinez, who hadn't spoken up for himself in months, now stood tall. Marcus, just last week you told me in front of the entire team that I should reconsider if I was really cut out for this level of strategic thinking. That was constructive feedback, Thorne pleaded. It was racism, Priya added, her phone still held high, a beacon of truth. You have systematically pushed out every person of color who demonstrated talent that threatened your own position. David Chen added his own testimony. Marcus, you threatened my job just yesterday for offering to help Anna. You told me to think carefully about enabling mediocrity. Thorne looked around the room, his eyes begging for an ally, for any sign of support. His former sycophants were now staring intently at the ceiling, at their phones, anywhere but at him. The ship was sinking, and they had already jumped overboard. Jennifer, Thorne turned to the HR director as his last hope. You know I followed all the official protocols. I documented everything according to company policy. Jennifer Walsh finally looked up from her legal pad, her face grim. Marcus, I cannot defend blatant recorded discrimination and assault. The legal liability is catastrophic. What discrimination? I treat everyone with equal rigor. As if on cue, Isabella held up her phone and played the audio from 25 minutes earlier. Thorne's own voice filled the conference room, arrogant and condescending. Folks like you are better at scrubbing toilets than scripting code. The sound of liquid pouring. A soft gasp. And then his self-righteous rant. This represents everything that is wrong with modern hiring, prioritizing demographics over merit. His own words were his executioner. Turn it off, Thorne whispered, his face buried in his hands. Please. Isabella stopped the recording. 25 minutes of documented harassment, she announced, broadcast live to over 8,000 people and witnessed by 24 employees. I think the case is closed. Alejandro's voice came through the speakerphone, cold and final. Marcus, security is on their way to escort you from the premises. Your network access and all company credentials will be deactivated in 60 seconds. Thorne's company phone buzzed and then went dark. His laptop screen flashed a "Access Denied" message. Please, Thorne stood on trembling legs. Can we just discuss this in private? I can change. I'll do better. Isabella looked around the conference room. She looked at Priya, still live streaming to a rapt audience of now 10,000. At Leo, recording for his own records. At David, whose simple act of courage had helped ignite the revolution. "Mr. Thorne, privacy is a privilege you lost the moment you chose to humiliate me in public." She paused, letting the weight of her next words settle. "As it turns out, people like me, we own people like you." The conference room erupted, not in polite applause, but in genuine cathartic cheers. Priya's livestream chat exploded. Miguel Rodriguez was actually yelling with joy. David was applauding so hard his hands were red. Thorne's former inner circle sat in stunned, terrified silence. "Brad Stevens," Isabella's voice cut through the celebration. "Your employment is suspended, pending a full investigation into intellectual property theft." Brad's face turned the color of chalk. "I was just following orders." "That defense didn't work at Nuremberg," David said quietly. "It's not going to work here." The conference room door swung open. 2 uniformed security guards stepped inside. "Mr. Thorne," the lead guard said, his voice devoid of emotion, "we need you to come with us." "This is humiliating," Thorne whispered. 30 years I've given this company." "30 years of what?" Isabella countered. "Building a culture of fear? Stifling innovation? Stealing credit from your junior employees?" Thorne had no answer. "Gentlemen," Isabella nodded to the guards, "please escort Mr. Thorne from the building. His personal effects will be packed and shipped to his home." Thorne walked to the door like a man on death row. At the threshold, he turned for one last pathetic appeal. "Isabella, I'm so sorry. I truly had no idea who you were." Her response would be quoted in business journals for years to come. "That's precisely the problem, Mr. Thorne. You should treat everyone with respect, because you never know when you might be talking to the CEO's daughter." The guards let him out. The 24 employees watched through the glass as he was walked through the department he once ruled, past the 50 workstations, and to the elevator. His long, toxic career at Nexus Dynamics ended not with a bang, but with the quiet, final ding of the elevator doors closing. Priya's livestream had crested 12,000 viewers. The hashtag #JustIceAtNexus was the #1 trend in the country. Isabella looked at her colleagues, her team, her future. "Excellence recognizes excellence," she said quietly. "Bigotry only recognizes its own fear." Jennifer from HR was still scribbling. "Jennifer," Isabella's voice was pure executive authority, "you are suspended, pending a full investigation. You were aware of systemic discrimination in this department, and your inaction makes you complicit." "I was following HR protocol." "You were protecting a broken, discriminatory system," David interrupted. "My formal complaint from 6 months ago. What happened to it?" Jennifer had no answer. "Security will be deactivating your badge as well," Isabella continued. Then she turned to David. "David Chen, congratulations. You are the acting vice president of engineering, effective immediately." David's jaw hit the floor. "Isabella, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll help me build a department worthy of its talent," Isabella replied. She then addressed the entire room. "For everyone who witnessed this behavior and stayed silent out of fear, we need to talk. For everyone who suffered under it in silence, we need to talk. And for anyone who actively participated in it, you need to talk to our legal department." She looked directly at Priya's camera, addressing the 15,000 people now watching. "Real change doesn't happen behind closed boardroom doors. It happens when courageous people refuse to be silent any longer." The conference room exploded in applause again, real this time. Isabella's phone buzzed. A text from her father. "Board meeting in 10. Get upstairs and bring your witnesses." She looked around the room one last time, at the faces that would forever see her differently, at a department that had been reborn in fire, at a company that was about to change the world. The revolution had taken exactly 7 minutes. The 6 months that followed were a whirlwind of radical, transformative change. Maya Williams, no longer hiding behind a false name, officially took the reins as interim CEO, a title that would become permanent. The board, faced with overwhelming evidence and a viral story that had become a national conversation, gave her their full, unequivocal support. The Most Justice at Nexus movement didn't just trend. It became a catalyst. The video from Priya's live stream, which eventually garnered over 5 million views, became required viewing in HR departments and business schools across the country. It was a masterclass in what not to do, and a testament to the power of one person's courage. Nexus Dynamics was reborn. Under the new leadership of David Chen, the engineering department became a powerhouse of innovation and inclusivity. With the fear of Thorn gone, ideas flowed freely. Productivity skyrocketed. The diversity report, once a document of shame, became a source of immense pride. They hired the best and the brightest, regardless of their background, and the company's bottom line reflected the wisdom of that choice. Priya Sharma was promoted to Director of Developer Relations, using her massive social media platform to champion ethical workplace practices and mentor young women in tech. Leo Martinez, as the new lead architect, was finally free to implement his most brilliant ideas, leading to a product launch that shattered all previous sales records. Isabella, for her part, became more than just a CEO. She became a symbol. She implemented sweeping changes across Nexus Dynamics, a transparent, anonymous reporting system with a guaranteed 24-hour response from a third-party ethics committee, mandatory, intensive unconscious bias and leadership training for all managers, and quarterly diversity audits whose results were made public to all employees. The Nexus standard became the new gold standard for corporate culture in Silicon Valley and beyond. One crisp autumn afternoon, Isabella stood by the same conference room window where Marcus Thorne had once surveyed his fiefdom. The department hummed with a vibrant, collaborative energy that was once unimaginable. She watched as a new group of interns gathered by the coffee machine, laughing and debating a coding problem. Among them was a young Latina woman, bright-eyed and full of ideas, who reminded Isabella so much of herself. But unlike Isabella's first day, this intern wasn't being stared at or whispered about. She was being listened to. She was being valued. Priya walked up beside her, a knowing smile on her face. "Looks different, doesn't it?" "It feels different," Isabella replied, a deep sense of satisfaction warming her chest. "It feels right." Her phone buzzed. It was a news alert. Another major tech company had just been exposed for its own toxic work environment, brought to light by a group of employees who said they were inspired by the FUFQ or Justice at Nexus story. The revolution was spreading. Isabella looked at Priya, at the thriving department, and at the city skyline beyond. The fight wasn't over, not by a long shot, but a significant battle had been won. It wasn't just about firing one bad man. It was about dismantling the system that allowed men like him to thrive for so long. It was about proving that a company's greatest asset isn't its code or its capital, but its culture and its conscience. She thought about Marcus Thorne, now a pariah in the industry, his name a cautionary tale. And she thought about the thousands of people who had reached out to her, sharing their own stories and their newfound hope. The path to justice is often long and difficult, and it rarely begins in a boardroom. It begins in the quiet moments of defiance. It starts when one person says, "Enough." If this story resonated with you, if you believe in the power of courage to change the world, then please subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. We share stories like this every week. True stories of ordinary people who accomplished extraordinary things. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, And remember to leave a comment below sharing a time you stood up for what was right. Because every voice matters. Every story counts. And true excellence, the kind that lasts, recognizes the humanity in everyone.